This is just the beginning, but the full story will unfold by the end of this video, so stay with me till the end. And now, let's begin. It started like most horrors do, not with screams, but with silence. Ethan was an ordinary traveler, the kind who collected rare books and old maps from street vendors and dusty shops tucked into forgotten alleyways. One rainy afternoon, while wandering a flea market on the outskirts of a crumbling town, he found it, an antique leather-bound book with brittle pages and a strange symbol etched on its cover. He almost passed it by, but something about the weight of it in his hand felt heavy, like it carried more than just stories. Tucked between the yellowed pages was a folded piece of parchment, a map. It showed an unnamed village, surrounded by dense forest and marked by strange hand-drawn symbols, a clock with no hands, an eye scratched out, and a bell tower circled in red ink. It wasn't on Google Maps, nor in any archive Ethan could find. The roads to it didn't exist anymore, and yet he couldn't look away. For days, the map haunted him. He dreamed of winding trails, of a fog that whispered secrets, of a village where the air stood still. Against every ounce of reason, he packed his bag, left his phone behind, and followed the path etched in ink. It took 3 days of walking through twisted woods, with birds falling silent and the trees growing unnaturally close. Then, he saw it, nestled deep within the forest, behind a curtain of fog, stood the village. The buildings looked like they hadn't aged a day. Cobblestone streets glistened with morning dew, even though the sun hadn't shone in hours. Wooden homes lined the streets, windows open but empty, curtains frozen mid-sway like someone had left them just seconds ago. It felt like stepping into a photograph. Clocks inside every house had stopped at 3:17 p.m., exactly the same time. Plates sat on dinner tables with food still untouched, dustless, as if time had simply held its breath. The church bell in the distance stood crooked, and beneath it, a sign read in faded ink, "Welcome to Marrow Hollow, judgment shall come at the hour of sin." Ethan didn't feel like a visitor, he felt like he was being watched. Ethan stepped past the rusted village sign, each footfall echoing far too loudly on the damp cobblestone. The fog around him didn't lift, it clung to his skin like cold breath, thickening with each step as if trying to push him back. But curiosity, that dangerous spark, kept him moving forward. The village was wrong. The air was still, but not dead, awaiting, perhaps. Doors hung ajar, swaying gently without wind. Children's toys were left in the street, unmoved, untouched. A tricycle leaned against a lamppost, its wheels slowly spinning. Not from wind, but as if someone had just stepped off it. Ethan tried calling out a hello, but his voice was swallowed whole by the silence. He checked inside one of the houses. The furniture looked lived in, but no one was there. Dishes were set for dinner, soup and bowls still warm to the touch, yet no steam rose. Family photos lined the mantel, showing smiling villagers with eyes that seemed a little too focusy to broken bar, as if they weren't looking at the camera, but at him. Then he noticed the mirrors. Every mirror in every home was covered, draped in cloth, nailed shut. In one house, the mirror was smashed entirely, shards swept into neat piles, and scribbled across the wall in something dark was a single phrase: "Greater than don't look at yourself after sunset." Ethan's breath caught. He stepped outside, shaken, and that's when he heard it, a bell ringing, distant, hollow, echoing from the old chapel tower at the village's center. But no one was pulling the rope. The sound came on its own, slow, and with each ring, the fog darkened a little more. The sky dimmed unnaturally fast, and something moved in the shadow of the bell tower. Not a person, too tall, too twisted. Then the whispers began, faint voices, layered, unplaceable, chanting from every direction but never close enough to understand. Ethan turned in a slow circle. He could feel them, watching, waiting, judging. He clutched the map tightly up. It was still in his jacket pocket and realized something horrifying. The village on the map had changed, new ink had appeared, smudged lines now showed his path, drawn exactly as he had walked. A red circle had been drawn around the chapel, and scrawled beneath it, in handwriting that wasn't there before, "Greater than you've been seen." His pulse thundered in his ears. Marrow Hollow wasn't abandoned, it was preserved, held in place by something ancient, something watching, something that never forgot what was done here. And now, Ethan wasn't just a visitor, he was part of the story. The old chapel stood like a scar at the heart of the village, its stone walls cracked and blackened, the bell tower leaning ever so slightly like it had grown tired of standing watch over secrets too heavy to bear. Ethan hesitated at the iron gate, his fingers brushed the rusted handle, and the moment he pushed it open, the chapel groaned, a deep, aching sound that made the hairs on his neck rise. The door didn't creak, it warned. Inside, dust hung in the air like ash, the pews were untouched, still in perfect rows. Candles lined the altar, lit, his breath caught. They flickered faintly, their flames unmoving. No air stirred inside the chapel, yet something whispered just beneath the silence, like distant weeping, or a prayer being recited backward. Ethan walked the aisle slowly, his footsteps muffled on the worn red carpet. At the altar sat a book, large and bound in cracked leather. It wasn't a Bible, it was a diary. The cover read, "Father Josiah, Keeper of Confessions." Ethan opened it, fingers trembling. The pages were fragile but intact, filled with dates and horrifying entries, written in a hand that became shakier, more frantic with each page. Greater than March 2, 1891. They begged me to keep it buried. The council demanded silence, but silence doesn't wash away sin, it feeds it. The more we hide, the louder the screams become at night. Greater than March 27, 1891. The girl returned, the one we sacrificed to stop the sickness. She walks the village with no eyes, only mouths where her cheeks should be. She speaks for all of them now. Greater than April 5, 1891. I cannot sleep. The villagers do not age anymore. Children stay children. The dead do not rot. This place is frozen because time is afraid to move forward. We have become the sin that time refuses to forgive. Ethan's hands shook as he flipped through more entries, rituals, secret meetings, blood offerings, and the truth of what kept this village locked in eternal twilight, a curse sealed with silence, powered by the souls of those who once lived in peace. Until fear made them monsters. At the very end, a page was ripped out, but behind it, something was tucked inside the cover. A smaller note, written quickly, almost in desperation. Greater than if you're reading this, you've stayed too long. They know your name, your voice, your sins. Leave nothing behind, not your breath, not your shadow, or you'll stay, like us. Suddenly, the chapel grew colder, the candles blew out. Ethan turned, and there, standing between the pews, were villagers, but they weren't human anymore. Their eyes were gone, skin pale and stretched, mouths sewn shut with black wine, yet from their throats came whispers. The same he'd heard outside, now growing louder, closer. They raised their hands, pointing not at him, but at the diary. He dropped it. The moment the leather hit the floor, the chapel shook, and the bell began to toll again. Once, twice, 3 times. Ethan turned and ran, heart pounding, as the chapel behind him howled like a thing alive. He didn't know how long he ran or where his legs took him, but the whispers followed, because in Marrow Hollow, nothing ever really leaves. Ethan burst from the chapel, lungs burning, every instinct screaming to keep running. But the village had changed. What was once a straight path through the square now twisted into unfamiliar turns. Houses stood in places they hadn't before. Doors he had opened were now shut. Windows once broken were perfectly intact, as if the village had rewound itself, resetting like a nightmare in loop. And the sky, it was no longer the dull gray of evening. It had turned a deep, bruised red, unnatural, like a wound that refused to heal. Shadows bent in the wrong direction. Even the trees whispered his name now, greater than Ethan, Ethan. They didn't shout, they hissed it. Every step he took sank into the earth like the land itself didn't want him to leave. His phone, dead. Compass, spinning in circles. The map app, useless. It just said one word on a blank screen. Here, he ran toward where the road once began, where he had first entered the village, but instead found a stone wall that hadn't existed before. As he touched it, faces formed in the mossy stone. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Their mouths opened, but no sound came out. Then the ground trembled. A figure emerged from the fog. It wasn't like the others. Not pale, not stitched, not silent. This one wore a long black coat, its face veiled by a wide-brimmed hat. In its hand was a rusted lantern glowing with an eerie, cold flame. It was on fire. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Ethan froze. The figure raised the lantern slowly, and as it did, the fog around them cleared. Behind it, Ethan saw something terrifying. His own body, lying on the ground, eyes wide open, lifeless, but he was standing. Wasn't he? He stepped forward, confused, and pain exploded in his chest. He looked down. A thread, black as ink, had woven through his skin, like a spider stitching him into reality. The lantern keeper spoke for the first time. Greater than you, read the truth. And truths must be carried. Ethan screamed, not in fear, in resistance, but his voice cracked like dry leaves. The villagers circled him now, their mouths no longer stitched shut. They began to chant, greater than he stays, he knows, he remembers. The ground beneath him opened like a yawning mouth, and he felt himself falling, not into dirt, but into time itself. A moment later, a family of hikers passed near the edge of the forgotten forest. One of the children spotted an old wooden sign, half buried in vines. It read, Marrow Hollow, founded 1842. The father squinted. Greater than that village isn't on the map, but the child was already walking toward a trail that hadn't been there before. At the edge of the forest, a figure stood, holding a lantern, waiting. Darkness swallowed Ethan, but this wasn't death, it was something worse. He was awake and buried in time. All around him, there were voices, some weeping, some begging, some simply whispering the same thing, over and over again. Greater than I shouldn't have come here. I read the names. I saw the truth. He carries the lantern now. Ethan's body was gone, yet he felt every emotion, fear, regret, confusion. He saw flickers of other lives strapped like him. A woman in a 1920s dress staring endlessly into a cracked mirror. A boy searching for his dog, holding a rotting leash. A priest, kneeling in prayer, whispering forgive me on loop. Each soul had come for answers. And each became part of the village's living memory. The lantern keeper stood in the center of it all, his coat now tattered, his flame dim. He was growing weaker, and Ethan understood. Greater than someone must always carry the truth. Someone must hold the lantern, or the village dies. And its sins rise again. That's when it happened. The lantern floated into Ethan's ghostly hand. It didn't burn. Instead, it breathed, like it was alive. Ethan saw the book open before him, the same one from the chapel, but now the pages were filling with names, modern names, recent names, new visitors. He saw a girl from 3 weeks ago who came with the paranormal vlog team, a man in a suit who vanished in 1998, last seen walking into the woods, a police officer who ignored the warning sign and crossed into Marrow Hollow, YouTubers, explorers, thrill seekers, all names were now his to guard. He understood now. Marrow Hollow wasn't haunted by ghosts, it was haunted by stories, by people who remembered what shouldn't be remembered, and those stories had to be kept quiet, buried, or else the village would spill into the world again. And now Ethan's task was clear. He was the new lantern keeper, his soul trapped in the cycle of secrets. Meanwhile, in the present day, The girl from the opening scene, the hiker's daughter, stood at the edge of the forest again, drawn by something unseen. Her father called out, "Let's go," but she hesitated. In this fading light, she saw a flicker through the tress, a broken barb, a boy, holding a lantern, smiling faintly. Then he was gone. She blinked, confused, but something inside her whispered, "Greater than come back tomorrow." She nodded silently. The cycle begins again. Please share this video so more people can uncover the dark truth behind this forgotten tale. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more chilling stories. Now,